everyone. Have you ever just like spaced out in a conversation? You know you're there, but you're not really listening.
Oh, yeah, all the time.
Well, that's what we're gonna like dig into today, the whole world of listening. And we've got this book, You're Not Listening, by Kate Murphy, to help us out.
I think that's something we all kind of take for granted, Like,
Yeah.
listen, it seems so simple, but it's really not.
Exactly. So Kate Murphy, she's a journalist, spent years researching this, and her book is like full of crazy insights.
Yeah.
She even links this whole like lack of listening thing to loneliness.
It's so true, though. It's like we're more connected than ever, but everyone feels so isolated.
Right.
And Murphy's argument is that that's because we're all terrible listeners.
Yeah, I can see that. I mean, if you're constantly like surrounded by noise and distractions, but nobody's actually hearing you, it makes sense that you'd feel lonely.
Totally. And she kicks off the book with this story about interviewing Oliver Sacks, the neurologist.
Oh, yeah, I know him.
But get this. The interview takes place in her bedroom closet.
Wait, her closet.
So Sacks was super sensitive to noise. And she wanted to, like, create this totally quiet, intimate space, for deep listening.
Makes sense.
No distractions, just pure presence. And it worked. They had this amazing conversation about life, death, the whole shebang.
Wow, that's pretty powerful.
It is. It shows how much we underestimate real listening.
Yeah, because it's not just hearing right. It's different.
Totally different. It's active. You have to put in the effort to actually pay attention.
So I'm starting to feel bad about my own listening habits now.
Don't worry, we're all guilty of it.
But you mentioned something before about like brainwaves syncing up.
Oh, yeah. Neuroscientists have actually found that when two people are really locked into a conversation, like truly listening to each other, their brainwaves start to align.
Whoa, their brains are literally on the same wavelength.
Pretty much.
That's crazy. So what does that mean for us, in everyday life?
I think it just highlights how deep that connection can be when you really listen. It's not just about understanding the words, It's about connecting on a neurological level, creating this shared understanding and empathy.
So, like, if we want to actually build strong relationships, we can't just, like, hear people. We have to really listen.
Exactly. You have to be present, engaged, open to what they're sharing. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, but if it's so powerful, why aren't we all, like, amazing listeners already? What gets in the way?
Right. Well, Murphy digs into that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are all these barriers, like internal and external stuff.
Yeah.
One of the biggest is probably technology.
Yeah, makes sense. It's hard to focus on a conversation when you've got your phone buzzing every 5 seconds.
Exactly. Murphy calls it technoference.
Yeah.
It's that constant bombardment of information from our devices. Our brains are basically being trained to get distracted.
Yeah.
So it's harder and harder to just be present.
Like, we're always multitasking, even when we're trying to have, like, a one-on-one conversation.
Right. And it's not just the external stuff either. Sometimes it's our own thoughts that get in the way. Have you ever been talking to someone and you're so busy thinking about what you're going to say next that you totally miss what they're saying?
Oh my God, all the time. Like, I'm so focused on my response, I'm not even really listening.
Exactly. And sometimes we don't even realize we're doing it. That internal chatter, it's like a wall between you and the other person.
Yeah.
But Murphy also talks about this other barrier. It's kind of weird. Sometimes we actually confide in people we're less close to.
Really? Why would you hold back from, like, your closest friends and family?
You'd think that would be the safest space, right?
Yeah.
But there's this thing called the closeness communication bias.
Okay, I'm curious. What's that?
Basically, it's like because we think we know our loved ones so well, we don't really listen as closely.
Oh.
We assume we already know what they're going to say, how they'll react, so we don't give them our full attention.
So it's like it's easier to share with a stranger because you're not worried about judgment?
Exactly. Isn't that wild? But okay, so if all this stuff is getting in the way, how do we actually become better listeners?
Yeah, that's the question I need answer.
Well, Murphy's got some great tips.
Yeah.
One that really stuck with me was from this former CIA interrogator, Barry McManus. He said the key is to cultivate childlike curiosity.
The CIA. Whoa, okay. I'm listening.
Think about it. Kids are naturally curious, right? They ask a million questions. They want to know everything.
Yeah.
That's the energy we need to bring to conversations,
So instead of going in with like an agenda or assumptions, you're just open to whatever comes up.
Exactly, like you're exploring a whole new world.
Yep.
McManus calls it listening to your curiosity.
I love that. So how do we actually do that?
One thing Murphy suggests is practicing pausing before you respond. It sounds simple, but that extra beat can make a huge difference, to really absorb what the other person said before you jump in.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of interrupting people sometimes. It's like I can't wait to get my own 2 cents in.
We all do it.
Yeah.
But that pause, it shows the other person you're really listening that their words matter.
Right.
It gives you time to actually consider their perspective before you offer your own.
So you're shifting the focus away from yourself.
Exactly. And instead of trying to give advice or fix their problems, just ask open-ended questions.
Right.
Like, tell me more about that, or what was that experience like for you? Encourage them to share more.
So it's not about finding solutions, it's about making them feel heard.
Exactly. It's about understanding their emotions, their motivations,
Yeah.
not just the words themselves. Remember, it's about connecting with another human being.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. But does all this listening actually lead to like tangible benefits? I mean, besides just feeling more connected to people.
Oh, totally. And this is where it gets even more interesting. Murphy talks about all this research that shows how listening affects everything from like ethical behavior to success at work.
Ooh, okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more. Ethical behavior, that's a new one. How does listening make us better people?
It's interesting, right? Murphy actually argues that even gossip can be a good thing.
Wait, gossip? That doesn't sound very ethical.
Well, not like the mean kind, but think of it as a way we learn about social dynamics,
Okay.
like how to behave,
Mm-hmm.
what's acceptable, what's not.
So we're listening for clues about like social norms and stuff?
Exactly. Even if it's indirect, it makes us more sensitive to ethical considerations.
Hmm. I never thought of it that way. So how does this all tie back to listening, though?
It's by listening to these stories, even if they're about other people, that we develop empathy.
Yeah.
We start seeing the world from different perspectives, which helps us understand, human nature.
So it's not just about connecting with one person. It's about understanding the whole like social web.
Exactly. And then there's the elephant in the room, technology and our attention spans.
Oh, yeah. I feel like I can barely focus on anything these days.
You're not alone.
Yeah.
Murphy talks about this Microsoft study that found the average human attention span has shrunk. Like a lot.
How much are we talking?
Since the year 2000, it's gone from 12 seconds down to 8.
8 seconds. Seriously. That's less than a goldfish.
It's kind of scary, right? Our brains are wired for instant gratification now. It makes deep listening so much harder.
So technology makes it harder to focus, and then our lack of focus makes us crave even more technology. It's like a vicious cycle.
Totally. But the good news is, listening is a skill you can learn. And it's not just important for our personal lives, it's huge in the workplace too.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that. Tell me more.
So Google did this big study called Project Aristotle. They wanted to figure out what made some teams super successful.
Okay.
They looked at hundreds of teams, and guess what? The most successful ones all had strong listening skills.
Really? More than like intelligence or experience?
Yep. It wasn't about having the smartest people. It was about how they communicated.
Interesting. So what were they doing differently?
They practiced something called conversational turn-taking. Everyone got an equal chance to speak, and everyone else actually listened.
Ah, so it's not enough to have just one or two good listeners. Everyone has to be on board.
Right. It creates this environment of trust and respect. People feel safe to share their ideas and actually collaborate.
So listening can literally make or break a team.
Pretty much. And Murphy highlights people who've really mastered this art of listening, like Terry Gross from NPR's Fresh Air.
Oh, I love her. She's amazing at getting people to open up.
It's because she's such a good listener. She makes her guests feel totally comfortable, and she asks really insightful questions.
So it's not just about being quiet. It's about showing the other person you're really present.
Exactly. And sometimes the best way to do that is to embrace silence.
Silence. Isn't that kind of
I
awkward?
know it can feel weird. But Murphy argues that silence is key for good listening. She tells this story about a top salesman at Gallery Furniture.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does selling furniture have to do with silence?
This guy, his secret is he lets the customers do all the talking. He just listens, doesn't interrupt, doesn't push a sale.
Yeah.
He just creates space for them to express themselves,
And that works.
like a charm. By listening so carefully, he figures out exactly what they need, and then he guides them to the perfect furniture.
Wow, that's pretty clever. Of course, you have to be mindful of cultural differences too,
Oh,
right?
yeah, for sure. Some cultures are totally comfortable with silence,
Yeah.
while others find it really awkward.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into listening, what are the biggest takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the main thing is listening is a skill we can all learn and improve on. It takes practice and intention.
And it's more than just being quiet. It's about actively engaging with the other person.
Exactly. Ask questions. Pay attention to their body language.
Mhm.
Really try to understand their point of view.
And maybe most importantly, approach every conversation with curiosity.
Exactly. Yeah. You never know what you'll learn or who you'll connect with when you truly listen.
Well said. This has been fascinating.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure.
So, listeners, we hope this deep dive has inspired you to think a little differently about listening. As a final thought, we want you to consider this. Think about a recent conversation where you felt truly heard. What made it so special?
We encourage you to keep exploring this topic. And if you want to learn more, check out You're Not Listening by Kate Murphy. It's a great read.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. We'll see you next time for another deep dive into a brand new topic.